Hello Tech Genius, I am Ravi. Have you ever imagined a place where learning is as dynamic as the technology shaping your world? Then here's a deal. With iMatix, you can make sure the learning is exciting, impactful right from the beginning. You have interactive sessions with expert-led courses. In the world of tech, from data science to cloud computing, it's not just about a session, it's about doing, building, learning by solving real problems. So let's get started. I'm practicing implicit grant type. In that application worth clients and then implicit client. Combination. This is the redirection URL and the scope is right. And go to advanced. Advanced, we have added here implicit type. Here I need to add implicit or something like that. No, it's fine. The code is all present. That's fine. Then I will see the changes. Whenever I'm testing here implicit, it's a new client. Client authentication field. In my what is your URL? Can you show me your URL? Client authentication is getting failed. Client can be implicit client. Scope is equal to right. You're giving a response, type token. You try to erase this one. That's fine. Client ID you are giving. Go back and try to hit again. Client authentication. Which client you are trying to access. I mean, not client ID, but which user you are trying to access. Before I'm accessing, it's getting an issue, right? But before I'm accessing, I guess the user is not getting authenticated before. Try again. Just hit it. It's getting a client authentication field where it claimed. Can you try to log in once? Implicit client. Show me your client ID again. Client ID. This is right. In implicit client. But it is not asking. You are already logged in. Can you go to where you're hitting that URL? Go to that URL once. Notepad press. Here you're trying to authorize the redirect your ID. Everything looks fine. To authorize the visualize GSSP client ID. And where you're trying to hit that URL, can you just try to log in with any other user? Go back. Or the user. Or the user. Medline user also fine. Do here once. After one more tab, take one more tab. Try here in the same. Then in the same try. Let's hit it. Not URL. I think client authentication means the client. This client even not able to authenticate with your user somehow. Implicit client. And go to the first one again. Or the service is Auth2 provider is there. OAuth2 provider. Auth2 provider. That's fine. Go to advanced. In advanced, scroll down here. It's a scroll down. Here is implicit also there. That's fine. Go back above. Go back to your client once. And open your implicit client. Scroll down. Client type, is there any confidential? Client type confidential. Go to Advanced tab once again. Response type, you have authorization code. You have token. What's the token? Endpoint authentication. Just scroll down. See whether that's fine. Subject type. Everything looks fine. Is your issue getting issue with this client or with? This is the client. Only this client only. Subject type of link. Scroll down. Scroll down again. OAuth to client. I guess you are created in a contract. Go back to your URL. This is your contractor. Then are you using contractor? No, I guess you have to change the real. I know Rajiv / that contractor. You have to give. See, you have created your client in contractor, but you are trying to hit with. Oh, go to a point. I got your point. We are going to change here. Here I guess after 801/Rajiv. Right. Here I guess we need to update the contractor. Here /Rajiv /contractor. /2. After this one you have contractor / and try now. Mostly this is the issue, Pranay. This will be my issue nowadays. It is not far. Here I do. If you click on your client, you will basically switch with your URL folder. Not alright. But these identities are in contractor. We need to update the URL. From there, go back to your URL once. OAuth to contractor. After // REAMSH root/erms. Root or /rims again. And then contractor /contractor /then / that's it. Remove the contractor from there after Rajiv. Got /contractor. Remove from after Rajiv. Now try again. Now give user. But this user should be present in your this contractor, or if this user is present in contractor, then fine. Otherwise we need to take another user. Click on. You are getting access to an account. In top realm I have created, I think, these identities. Can you use right? Check in your contractor once we are identities in your contractor. These already. Identities are present. In top realm also same identities, right? Identity same, right? Identities could remain same. If we create, it could. It will be the means because identity would remain same because the database would be same. For all that, right? That's what I'm going to practice that. And also hybrid also. Hybrid one is the 2020, right? 20 underscore ID token, right? %20 ID token, correct. I'll take this one and then response type. Well, it's time to fail. Oaths to Reels. The rope. The contractor. Redirect your eye. The local host. The auto-ream. The contractor response type core %ID token. Redirect your eye. Looking fine. I need to add anything here. Client ID, which was your client ID. Client ID. Now this is your trying in your top. The URL would be in contractor. Refresh client is not there in contractor. Either you need to create or you can use the implicit client. Implicit client. But hybrid client and refresh token both are same, or? But what do you mean hybrid? I don't get a question. Hybrid client is like where you can get the multiple token values like authorization code or ID token. Refresh token is a part of the access token. Where the access token, or we want to refresh the access token. For refreshing the access token, we use the refresh tokens. When we get the access token, we'll get the refresh token as well. Once we can use that existing refresh token to get the new access token. That was the purpose of the refreshed. How to touch the hybrid client here? Can I have a client here? Go to the implicit client. Click on that. It is already settled. I go to advanced. You already have authorization code and implicit. You and the code and ID token is already there. It's fine, you don't need to add anything right now. Code and ID token is there in second line. The code and ID token is already there. Basically, if you do in for a client for any project purpose, then you need to remove all this response type and you need to keep only those which are required, right? These are already present by default by the force. But here we are testing it. That's fine. Then we can keep it as much as you want. But in our original client for any project purpose, we need to remove all this response type and we keep only those response type which are required. But you can keep it here for your testing. Code, we have already have a grant type to write. We can. This is already has a setting as a hybrid because we can get the authorization code and the implicit, right? And in response type we should have code or ID token, right? For this one, authorization for code, implicit for ID token. Code and ID token is there. And now go to your URL and change your client to the implicit client. From refresh client to implicit. You got the code and you got the ID token both. This is hybrid, right? This is the hybrid. Thank you, go ahead. Tomorrow I will. If any, I will tomorrow. A little bit. I understand right now what is the implicit client, what is the other register code, and what is the hybrid client. Next I will practice and then I will do one thing. I haven't given the updated notes. I'll give you the after class. I'll share with the team class. Then they will share with their latest. You familiar? And also please share me interview questions. I'll show. I'm just working on it. I'll share. Thank you. Today we have to discuss the SAM, Security Assertion Markup Language. We'll start with the introduction. What's actually, it is basically for her first definition is SAM. All we call this full form is Security Assertion Markup Language, right? Here was the purpose of it. 1A, it's a standard that with the help of SAM, we are able to access the multiple services, or you can say multiple applications with a single set of credentials. Like in your company, like you are able to log in with the Windows 1, right? Then you have the multiple login with your email ID or something, then you will have access to. Then you can access multiple companies. You are right, learning URL portal or timesheet portal or any other portal, feedback portal or year-end one, and I multiple like that. There's many. Then for them, you don't need to go for them. There's a different applications, right? We started discussing the salmon. I was telling the example. We are in organization, we use this concept. Whenever we log in your system, in your company, you will can be redirected to the multiple applications, your timesheet, you are learning portal, or your feedback portal, or your teams. Right. You don't have to every time give your credentials. I use a username or password, and because at the back end they all are different applications. How you will be able to get access of all these applications without authenticating again and again? That's where with this salmon comes in picture. security assertion mark applying. Here, then they introduce the salmon, like then somewhere you're able to access the multiple applications with your credentials. We discuss how we can set up a salmon, how the ForgeRock can create this salmon application, can make any applications to the single sign-on. Single sign-on is come with a concept in the salmon case over. Single sign-on is basically a sign-on stability for a user to authenticate but gain access to multiple applications. That was to be called a single sign. And what does salmon do? Salmon is do all these things. Summer security assertion mark a plan which is do all these things like with interact with the service provider, interact with the IDP and discuss in detail. Where this comes in, here first, if you see the diagram, I will get one more diagram like we were used in OIDC, right? How the user and user, but here this is a diagram. This is a diagram where the credentials are managed by a single entity like we are. This credentials, your credentials will be managed right. IDP identity provider like this one similar to identity provider. You see my mouse or not, right? Alright. This one similar to, do you have anything any more cut over here? If you see this one like this one is like this credentials IDP, which were our credentials will be managed right. Like you have the user for 0, like this IDP identity provider act as a IDP, right? Like for here for 0 can be act as identity provider, which can provide this similar approach and concern, right? And where this one is work, this is called as service provider where the applications will be authenticate your web. You are able to sign in application like in your company, your teams or your learning portal. That will be all the service provider, right, where you need to. The provider for service means that end user is trying to access the application, right? This is the end user. The end user, this is the end user will try to access this service provider and they authenticate here into the IDP. The IDP will have to try to authenticate and then this IDP will create assertion. What is the assertion over here? What is the assertion over here? Assertion is a set of statements after the user authenticated. They make an assertion which is the XML based format, right? It's like you can say it's XML formatted tokens. Once is a shunt and provide the assertion they provide in the same example when we test it. I'll show to you. This assertion's what you say now. This assertion issued by the identity provider. And where they have what will be on this assertions. In assertions it would be like piece of information for the user's profile or what the level of authentication have been performed, that what the session. And then once it gives this assertion or this thing to the service provider, then it will confirm the authenticate as for the authentication to confirm the authentication request. That's why it becomes a circle, where it's called the circle of trust. When all this setup happens and when all this flow works perfectly fine, then it's called the SAML. And when the SAM and identity provider able to connect to each other, where IDP provide the assertion and SAML able to get authenticated by the IDP, and the circle of trust has been formed. It's a similar provider. Similar provider told you that the services are provided by similar like service provider, which are the services, right? What are the other applications which will be end user trying to sign in? It's a circle of trust is a M concept that there's a weak say, and which have one at least one IDP and one at least one SP. If I show you where the circle of trust, where this identity provider and SAML, and where the applications we can create in SAML. If I show you go into the application and go into the federation, you will see the circle of trust and the entity providers right. Why is called the federation as not a SAML? Because it's like you just federate the identities means where they can use the same identity for the other application. Where it's called the foundation. Later it was calling 7.7 over directly there, but now they have changed it to the foundation identities. It's a means it's currently are referred to the federal entities system. We use their identities managed across multiple. It's not even when the SAM2 concepts not only work with your internal applications, it can also working with the external application which is outside your organization as well. That's we call here, they call the cross domain single sign up. Right? That's why they are coming to show this federation identities. You can allow the authentication for the multiple applications. That's why there's a term use of federation, where I was talking about here in the diagram. This is the circle of trust. I show you the circle of trust. This is a circle of trust like the group of identity and service providers. Here, whatever we have, provide the service provider and identity provider. We can have the multiple identity providers and we can have the multiple service providers. It's up to us how we can want to set up the system right. It's not like we can have only one single identity provider. We can have the multiple identity provider like here. We can create one identity provider for ForgeRock and we can create another identity provider from another organization, and it's up to us. And we can have as many as service provider like application where we can have created as many as space. That could answer here. If you need to create a circle of trust, you need to give right. If I give him caught, it will create a circle of trust. Currently we don't have any entity providers here. That's why it's showing blank a minimum requirement for circle of trust, right? If I over here if I created over here identity provider, there is no entity providers where we need to create a similar. Here if I need to create and hosted one, here this circle of trust is coming, but if I delete it from here right initially, if I don't delete the circle of trust and go to the entity provider. And if you see on the street, this one, if you see I don't have see a circle of trust, but this is the entity provider here, entity ID, we can create a multi. Any will create it, but I just want to show you now. What are these entity providers? If I create with any entity ID could be the any name or any URL as well. It's up to us. It shouldn't be like any specific. If I need to create a google.com as entity ID, I want to as service provider. This one. Alias I need to give to make sure it's a service provider or it's an entity provider. If I create this one, this is an entity provider create, it shows the SP. And it is. Having all these, we will discuss this one. What are major attributes of this one but currently? First, I want to give you a beautiful picture of what are the SP providers, what are the IDP provider. This is service. It should be application where you are able to authenticate with your credentials, single set of credentials. Here we have created now. Now, if you go to entity provider again, you will see this one is located right. Post, it means it's a location. And if you go to the other identity provider, and if I give any entity ID like, or which will be the IDP, right? Here I want to give the ID, give the IDP of this one identity provider matter. It will create IDP. This IDP have created. I'll discuss more. This is IDP as we have created, and now if you go into the IDP, you see the IDP. Over here in SP, you have seen we have given the alias over there, right? If you see, you come over there, you will see the meta. This one we will use when we test this one in circle of trust. Now there should be, now we have created one SP. If I show you my diagram, I have created one IDP, I'm the end user. You can be the end user. And I have created one IDP. Now I have created this SP. Google come, and this is M2 service, right? And I need a circle of trust in between them. Here what I do, I'll create a circle of trust. You can give any name, that's fine. Like I'm give AM circle of. Now if you see straight as active, you know if you want to make active active, if you make it active, then this circle of trust will be considered active. If you make it active, this circle of trust will be considered as inactive. Now if you see here in ForgeRock provider, you will see this is ML2, here is coming. And because we have created this one, you can add this. We have add this SPM2 service provider, right? This is what I'm telling you how this one is create. To test it, we need to make more changes. I'll show you as a, but I need to first go through the flow and everything. That what I was discussing about with you, the user. What is the end user over here? The person who's attempting to access the resource application, right? ForgeRock user is often referred to as a subject. That is, a user is usually web browser. Basically, from a web browser, we hit the URL and will try to authenticate the assembly flow. Identity provider I just showed you. The IDP is responsible for the authentication and users managing their account and issuing similar sessions, which authenticate your end user and issue the similar session. Service provider. I was a service provider, the provider for the service or application, and end user is trying to access any application you give. Like google.com, you're trying to access the google.com, right? That will be the service provider. We have a trust relationship. It should be the trust relationship between the two. This circle of trust will help to create the trust relationship between the ones we have created. I've just created the name. We need to do more changes inside. When we test it, then I'll show. Then user trying to access this one test, which enables user to rely on the search. Whether one circle of trust or the circle of trust is the AM concept that groups at least one IDP and one SP. Same we have done, which group of one IDP can have contained more. Even you can contain 100 of a similar applications and multiple IDP. Basically, IDP we can have only. Usually we create a 1 or 2, 3 as per the client because we want to rely on multiple IDP. You can create as many as you want, but generally it will be created for by 1 or 2 or 3, depends upon the client. If we have many applications and because one IDP can able to authenticate or provide a session to multiple SPs, even one IDP would be enough, but somehow we want to divide the workload. We give some of the link or some of the service provider to one IDP and some of the service, but others we can create multiple IDP. Basically, if we can create, we can have the multiple one basically in an original product. The SPs are more like 100, 200, 300. SPs are over there easily and IDP are, I guess, in a single digit 1, 3, 4 kind of that, which I have seen in my career. Assertions or session is a set of statements. It's like a set of statement. I'll show you when we get the session how the session look like. Session will be look like the XML file, right? Is XML file contain all the user's information and level of the authentication. When we test this issue, this is a similar flow. Like how the similar flow will work. I have to show you that flow once. Overview of the similar. But how in actually this is similar flow. This works right. Let's create it for you. That seems it's a same like this one, but it's just more of for in detail for men. How will it work? Let me create a bad one. I'll create one and use. Do you have any question till now? What we have discussed for regarding this one? And no plan. I need to understand more. Here two things right. One is the service provider and another one is the IDP. Who is giving the service? That is the service provider. Service properly. Who is not giving the service? That don't look good, that correct. I mean services are provided by service provider. Basically services means which application you want to authenticate. What is the Zoom over here? Right. We are using. Basically Zoom is a service provider. Could be like not with a service provider because you are able to want to log into the Zoom, right? Somehow Zoom services are integrated with the ForgeRock or with any identity provider, right? Then if you need to go to the Zoom, you don't need to give your credentials written. Then Zoom will be the service provider. Zoom can't be the identity provider. Identity provider, it will be the live ForgeRock who have your users information and you can authenticate and who have all these concepts that have been created in their background that this flow can be worked on. Here in our practice, the ForgeRock will be the IDP, the identity provider. Service provider where we authenticate the applications like IDC, right? We are trying to authenticate the application and to creating the fetching, the tokens and all right. We can create as many as client we want, but how we are doing that with the help of the for job we are with there. We are using the OAuth to provide a service, right? which help us to do all this thing with the client and everything now here in SAML. They are doing the identity provider and they are there. We have, I recall, the identity provider in OAuth 2. We are calling the OAuth 2 provider in SAML. I recall the identity provider IDP, and the here for stroke will be the IDP, which try to give the authenticate request and everything and doing everything. As we will be the application and IDP will be the for stroke or identity provider. Like, let me get to diagram, you will better understand. I hear this one will be the end user. Let me, you are end user that. Is any application you want to have any application. Like if you see any application outside application line and you learn important, it will be an application, a learning portal application. Now let me create. Here is the portal. Here is the IDP identity provider. In our practice, it will be the Forger. The Forger AM will be the identity provider. Here, you want to authenticate this learning portal application. Now you can have this one. Now how do you start? We count that. Here, the first rule will be the authentic and authenticated user. Like you are a RAG, you are an authenticated user to access the service provider. You are trying to attempt success. You are an authenticated user. You are just an authenticated user. This is the first. An authenticated user trying to user attempt to access this learning portal. Now how it will be authenticated? Now the SP determines the IDP associated with the end user and redirect the browser. This is P. And this is currently attached with this IDP, the Forger game. If I show you this one with our example, here learning portal, I'll give in styler learning portal. I'll give the Google.com, you will understand. Google.com application. It could be any application. Here this one Google.com, and then here you are user trying to access this application. And then it will send then how? The SP determines it will associate it with which one. With this as is associated with the Forger. Now it will This one, it will redirect the user. It will hear first one before that one. This one, it will redirect it. The second attempt would be redirect the user. Redirect the user. Redirect the user from this to redirect the Rajiv to the IDP. And it will say go over there, and with the same authentication request, then it will send this one, then it goes to the AM, then ForgeRock authenticate the user, then ForgeRock, once after getting this similar authentication request, it will authenticate the user. Then it will authenticate the user. Authenticate the user. Then it will authenticate the user. After authenticating the user right, it will redirect the user to SP. Now after that, this user will be redirected with the authenticate user. It includes some information. Right what? Artifact ID. I'll show you the artifact ID. Artifact ID. Right. What will be inside this artifact ID? This artifact ID will have the assertions that XML this artifact ID includes. Assertion. This assertion will be in an XML format. It's well if you will test it once, I show you this assertion here. If I show you something, alright, here we have this assertion. If you go to the SP1, now this is request, and you go to the assertion processing, you can see that the assertion processing is there. Right. Ordinance 1 adapter. And then this services, you see a session consumer service. It's able to consume this session. When this ForgeRock and this one, this is we get the assertion. This IDP gives the assertion, but as be able, we need to consume the service. Now what we'll do, one next step. Once this IDP gives this all this information, authenticate the user and give the artifact ID includes assertion right. Then this assertion will be sending to this artifact ID will be sending to the service provider by end user. Then all this information will be sent to the service provider. Then it will redirect the user. User including all this artifact ID. And then in here, and then after artifact ID, then it will give exchange artifact ID with this one and validate. Now after this is given, it will check and it will validate. Here they will. Will validate it will send. You can say exchange. Send the artifact ID again, send the artifact IDP to confirm and to validate the assertions. That to confirm that this IDP only has. We provided this assertion. Validate the assertions. Validate the assertions. Then once it's validated, then our authorized user and resource will be provided. The end user will able to authenticate the application. Then user will be authorized. Then user will be. Access line background 10. Point after the get, validating the assertions it authorized the user and provide the service or user able to load. What full flow is coming? This authenticated user attempt to a Samsung Google account. Then this Google account redirect the user to the SAML authentication request. Request would be something could be look like anything like this. SAML IDP is able to discuss that. Like this, and SAML authentication request to the IDP, and then this IDP give authenticate the user and provide the artifact ID, which includes the assertion, and then this one and it redirect the user. This redirect the user, or with assertion this first user will get all these details, and then it redirect the user with all this artifact ID. You will see this artifact ID and all this I got from IDP. Then as people talk to the IDP you'll send, did you send this artifact ID? I need to validate where our user has given me is validate their session. If it's validated once, then authorize the user, and then user will able to log into the application. All this flow will run at the back end. In between we have a lot of things. Here, if you see, if I show you in an actual SPMon where this assertion consumer service, session consumer service, where they're able to consume this session service, that will. This is SPMC, and check this assertion which I'm talking about. And if I show you more in detail the services, this artifact, there's a multiple artifact over there. If I should give you C over there, and if I click any of them, default to anti-plant. See, if you see the binding, we have all these binding, artifact HTTP post, right? We can use any of I'll tell you the difference as well. What's the difference between the HTTP for when we need to use the artifact binding, when we need to use to the post bindings, right? Basically different for artifact binding, where we don't share the response or user information, and opposed to when basically we need to transmit the similar to assertions to the client. We'll test both for the HTTP post and HTTP for artifacts when we create a similar application over that. Let's first go through the attributes of this one. This is how the full flow for the SAML will work, right? And if I go to the SP provider, SP1, if you see, this is signing and encryption, right? What will be the request and response would be signed. Authentication request signed, post response signed. It depends upon what client asks us. If they ask us to sign the authentication request, right, we can sign it. Signed means with any certificate it could be signed. You know the digital signature, right? That digital signature be signed, that it's like a digital signature of the SAML applications to make it more secure. Like they will say they get the authentication request and want to sign the authentication request. For the signing, they provide the certificate and say, with this certificate you need to sign. Then you need to use this one because the assertion signed. What about the assertions create when IDP provide this assertion, like when IDP, where the diagram goes? When IDP provide this assertion, like with artifact ID and everything they want to sign. These are the optional, right? It's not a mandatory, but if you need to go on to these services, you just need to enable this one. It will work. The post response, what after the signature assign? What are the post response? Then you need to sign it, right? Artifact response. Artifact response will be the user details and everything. Logout requests and name IDP. I'll discuss about them and name IDP. This is an important concept in SAML. Encryption, if you want to encrypt your attribute or you want to encrypt the assertion and secret. IDNAN algorithms, if you want to use any signing algorithm, right? You need to sign in and you need to sign the algorithm. There are multiple algorithms they provide, right? You can choose any one which is required. Basically, mostly CRF86 is being used by clients. That has been widely used. And then if you want to use encryption algorithm, you can use this name ID format, right? What I was talking about, this name ID request sign. This name ID format, how this name I request will be authenticated with the what is persistent transient. I'll discuss tomorrow. Email address. Name ID format, like how the user will be authenticated with the which one, with the email address or with any name, right? With any unspecified persistent transient, right? These are the name ID format list. Or you can give I didn't hear as well. Please stop the name. ID format say question you choose. This is the name ID. I'll discuss with you in detail what is persistent and when we need to use persistent, when we need to use transient, when we need to use this email address and all. Kerberos is actually for the Windows SO. Use whatever I was talking about initially, right? Giving you an example. That was a kind of the when you log into the computer and then you're able to log into multiple applications. That's the message we call the Kerberos authentication single sign-on. Kerberos is almost related to the Windows single sign-on. And this is authentication contacts. This is, I guess, by default. We mostly use it for the contacts wrapper, right? Conversion basic authentication. If you enabled it, then it's fine. Otherwise, you can use it, you can keep it the same as well. Basic authentication, you can change it if you give other authentication with a particular username, password, right? Then it will work with only for that authentication. and other assertion processing. Comes then this attribute mapper where they use auto federation key on everything account mapper. What is the account mapper? They're using name ID as user ID. If you see the name ID from the assertion when you show the assertion, then I'll show you what's the name ID and everything. Just go into this assertion mapping if I have any assertion information, or how does it look like. I'm just trying to get up some example for the similar session. Let me show you. This could be like the similar session. When you authenticate right, the similar session will be look like this. It will be the issue format. It could be the issue like here the Salesforce account right, and it would be the assertion ID right. Signature, you want to sign the authentication right, it would be the signature brand new or the certificate. This name ID format right, this name ID format I'm using this unspecified. If I show you this name ID format right, what I'm talking about is name ID format list right. This is the name ID format, and unspecified means it could be an email by name user. This will be the email ID, the name ID. Then this one. All this is the similar. This is called what could be as a assertion right. Similar session. This is called, this is how when you the IDP provides all this information to the service provider. Tomorrow I'll test, you will test this one. When we test it now, we will get the new one. We will see it, you will understand that this assertion. When we test it now, you will able to see in the network logs that the whole assertion they fetch it. Then you will see who will be the issuer, who were the assertion ID right. What the name ID format tomorrow. Basically, we will test this application and how this similar session, how we will do the testing part. Basically, how this assertion mark on this language look like. And did you understand the concept of the Samuels of what I'm trying to say? Once we test it now, when we run the commands, then you will understand more. Today we have time to go through the SAML. What's the SAML definition of it? What's the flow of it? Right? My main aim to make you understand what are the IDP, what are the service provider, what are the assertion right, and how, where we. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.